this is Chati with Yoga Body, and today's sequence of the day is called We Want the Funk. We're going to take some traditional yoga poses and make them funky. We'll start in Kali pose, which is a wide-legged squat. So we want to make sure that you're externally rotating your upper thighs so that when you bend your knees, they track over your second and third toes. Take yourself here and wrap your hands around your shoulders, and we'll start to move the hips to your own inner soundtrack. Just make it funky. What you want to do is feel a loosening in the hips, a strengthening in the quads. Tailbone is neutral, spine is tall. Take one more breath in, and one more breath out. From here, pause your legs so that you're in your squat pose, and then start to lower your hands down onto the ground. See if you can touch onto the ground and start to come into a forward bend, bringing your head down as low as you can. So you can stay here. You can also stay halfway with the spine stretching forward. And then find a point of balance and start to stretch your heels up off the ground. So whichever version is better, if you can start to bend your elbows to try to get your head closer in towards the ground. Take one more breath in and out. Lower your heels down, stretch your way back up, hug your shoulders, and let that tension ease away from your hips. So from here, what we'll do is transition to downward facing dog. So take your hands onto the ground, shoulder distance apart, and step back into your down dog. We're gonna make down dog a little funky by twisting the knees at first. So bend both your knees, shift them to the right, and have the heels move to the left, and stretch both hips up and back. Take a full breath in, and a deep breath out. Transition to the other side, bend the knees, twist them to the left, the heels will twist to the right. Try to keep the shoulders level as you move the hips back in space. Back to center. Walk your feet forward just a little bit so you're in a shortened stance here. And then what you'll do is we'll take a twist. Keep your right hand onto the ground and take your left hand somewhere on your left leg. And then we'll turn and look underneath the right armpit. Taking a full breath in and a deep breath out. Slowly release, and let's do the other side. Slide your right hand somewhere on the left leg. Doesn't matter where you touch. You just want to have a firm grip so that you can turn and rotate the chest. Taking one more breath in and out. Slowly release, and then step your feet back so that we can come back into downward facing dog. From there, we're coming into wild thing. So from down dog, stretch your right leg high behind you and bend the knee. Turn and look underneath your right armpit. So you can stay here, feel the stretch in the quad, feel a stretch in the hamstrings. Otherwise, trust that the ground is behind you, let your right foot drop down, and inhale, lift your left arm up. To transition back onto the ground, take your right hand onto the ground, lift your right leg up, and bring it all the way down. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Left foot lifts up, bend the knee. You can stay here. Turn and look underneath the armpit. Otherwise, very slowly, as best as you can, bring the foot onto the ground. The other arm lifts up. Lift the hips up, lift the chest up into wild thing. When you're ready, bring your hand back down, lift the foot back up, and slowly release the foot down. Bend your knees to the ground and rest for a moment, wide knees, child's pose. Let's take a breath in and a breath out. From there, roll your way up, bring your knees together, sit to one side, and stretch your legs out in front of you. We're coming to boat pose. So we'll do traditional boat pose first, which is balancing on the sit bones. So you can have your hands behind you at first to guide the pose and lift the toes up off the ground. You want to negotiate your balance here and engage your abdominal muscles to help support you. Spine lifting tall. Shins come parallel to the ground. You can stay here. To find your balance, lift one hand and then the other. Keep thinking about bringing your knees in towards the chest and your chest in towards the knees. Otherwise, stretch your legs out to straight and reach your arms forward. Take a big breath in and a deep breath out. Now we'll hold on to the back of the legs and then see if you can stretch your chest closer to your legs. Perhaps you can reach a little bit higher and do the same thing. Maybe you can reach even higher and then do the same thing. Doesn't matter how close the legs come into the body, what you want to work on is straightening your spine, engaging your abs, and enjoying the pose. Slowly release, and then we're going to do a little bit of ab work in your boat pose. So take yourself back, and we'll do boat pose with the knees bent, shins parallel to the ground. Take your hands behind your head. From here, take a big breath in. As you exhale, the left leg will straighten and you'll turn your right elbow towards your right knee. And then switch. And switch. Keep breathing. So what we're doing here is doing work for the obliques. You want to feel that you can bring your elbow towards the knee as you twist. So the twisting is as important as moving the legs. Let's do a couple more. And then when you're ready, pause, bring the legs down, wrap your hands around, and take a well-deserved rest for a moment. From here, lift the spine up, take your hands behind you, and just windshield wipe the knees side to side. You want to make sure that you didn't have any tension in the low back, doing some of that ab work. So from here, we're going to transition to camel and make our traditional camel pose a little bit funky. So what you'll do is you'll come onto your shins and have your knees about hip distance apart as you rise up into an L shape with the body. Traditional camel pose with both legs on the ground. So to make it a little funky, we're going to lift one leg up. So what you'll do is you'll take your hands on your hips for a moment and feel that the weight settles. You can have two versions of the feet. You see, I have my feet flat, so that means the tops of my feet are touching onto the ground. You can do that. If you want, you can tuck your toes under and have that version. If you do with the toes tucked under, just make sure that the heels don't splay in towards one another. You want to have your ankles and heels parallel. From here, to make it a little bit funky, what you want to do is start to lift one foot, that's my right foot, up off the ground. Hold on to the foot and bring it as close into the body as you can. Not into the midline, but you want the heel to reach towards your outer hip. From here, make sure again that you feel like the left heel is parallel, vertical towards the sky, doesn't go out or in. Inhale and stretch your left arm up and start to come into your camel pose. You'll inhale, lift your chest up, and as you exhale, start to bring your upper body back into space. Arms in line with the ears, and then what you want to feel is a lengthening of the spine up as the tailbone moves down. Take a big breath in and out. Neutralize the spine, release the foot, give it a little tap, and let's do the other side. Again, if you have your toes tucked under, you want to make sure that this heel stays vertical up towards the ceiling. Go ahead and hold on to your left ankle with your left hand. Inhale and stretch your right arm up. From here, stretch the spine tall, and as you exhale, start to back bend. Make sure you just don't drop your head back. Keep the neck in line with the rest of the spine so that the back bend can emerge from your entire spine, not just one part of the spine. Full breath in and deep breath out. Slowly release the pose and tap out the feet. Take your hands onto the ground, come up onto your tippy toes, and we're going to again windshield wipe the knees side to side. From here, we're going to do two versions of crow pose. So we're going to take our traditional crow and make it funky. Let's warm up the wrists first. You can bring your knees onto the ground. From here, turn your hands so that the fingers face in towards the body. Keep the elbows slightly bent and just lean your weight forward. What happens a lot of times is people do this wrist stretch and they overextend the elbows. You see, I'm like almost pushing my elbows out. So you want to keep a soft bend in the elbows. You can do circles. You can rock back and forth, something to loosen up the wrists. So when we do crow pose, we're weight bearing on the hands and the arms. So we want to make sure that this part of our body feels loose and supple. You can do the same thing, now pointing the fingers out to the side. You can rock side to side. And the last thing, if you can, take your hands so they're underneath your knees, and then just roll your way forward and back. This is massaging the muscles of the hands, loosening the joints there. But if you have bony knees like me, it might not feel so pleasant while you're doing it. And then slowly release, shake out your hands. So from here, traditional crow poses with two hands onto the ground, where we balance our knees on our upper arms. So first we'll do what's called baby crow. So baby crow is with the forearms down onto the ground. This might be a little bit more challenging than regular crow. So don't get confused by the nickname baby crow and you think it might be easier. It depends on the flexibility of your shoulders and your hips, because you need to be able to open the knees quite wide, get into a low squat so that you can get close to the ground in this pose. So from here, forearms are on the ground. You see my knees are wide. I walk my feet a little bit more forward so that I can connect my knees to my upper arms. My hands are shoulder distance apart, and then from here, I rest my knees on the backs of my arms. Don't let my shoulders collapse. Lift one set of toes up, and then the other set of toes up. Slowly release. Take the hands in front of you, and again, we'll windshield wipe the knees. The second version of crow we'll do is called funky crow. So for funky crow, you have one hand onto the ground, that's my right hand onto the ground, and one forearm on the ground, that's my left forearm. The alignment here is that my left elbow is relatively in line with my right palm. Again, I walk my feet forward, and just like I was doing regular crow, I'll lift my hips up and place my knees as close to my armpits as possible to give myself as big of a shelf as possible. Then I lean forward, engage my rhomboid muscles, the muscles between the shoulder blades, so my shoulders don't collapse down. And then from here, leaning forward, take one set of toes up, and then slowly lift the other. Releasing the pose, and let's go ahead and do the other side. So I'll show you from here so that you have a different view and angle of the pose. So now, my right forearm will come onto the ground. I'll line up my left hand about in alignment with my right elbow. Hands are shoulder distance apart. Lifting my hips up so I can get my knees up as close to my armpits as possible. I'll rest my knees on my upper arms. Then from here, pick up one foot. You can point the toes, hug your elbows together, and then lift your other foot up. Take a couple of breaths in. Keep engaging the muscles on the back, and then slowly release. Take the arms in front of you and windshield wipe the knees side to side. Nicely done.